Will this be the week that the college football playoff is decided? We're going to talk about that all and more on today's Barely Bowl eligible here on Always Draft Season.
This is KC Sports Network, proudly presented by Emprise Bank.
College football is in full swing now, hanging out with Matt Lane as I do every Friday here on the Always Draft Season channel. Maddie and I both wearing the color purple today. Matthew, how are you doing?
Listen, we're all sporting our Huskies today. You don't got to stand up. You don't got to show everybody what you have, even though it's not a Husky shirt. That's okay. Right. That's okay. The rest, just showing support for the Huskies and our Dukes and all the purple teams that we support. No, I'm doing good. I'm excited. We had good Thursday night games. We had good Thursday night games last night. It's been a while. The games tonight maybe not as good, but it's a nice little breather before, buddy. Come tomorrow, soon as kickoff starts, 11 a.m. Eastern or Central, noon Eastern. From that point on, essentially until Sunday night, football nonstop every second from when I wake up to when I go to bed. So much is happening. It's like I'm ready for it, but I need a little breather tonight. So we might watch Syracuse and Boston College, but if we have to miss some of it, it's okay.
Colorado State, Wyoming as well also going on if you're into that. I need to check the FCS schedule real quick because the Big Sky might have some stuff going on, but it is starting to get to playoff time in the FCS ranks. We're getting close to playoff time when it comes to the FBS ranks as well, as we had the first playoff rankings announced by the committee on Halloween. So shout out to the playoff committee for announcing these on Halloween. Maddie, kind of spooky, these rankings. Truthfully, looking at the college football playoff rankings, Ohio State, the number 1 team in the country. Georgia, number 2. Florida State, number 3. Right? I'm trying to do these off the dome.
No, they were not. Ended up number Florida State was 4. I believe that Michigan stayed at number 3. So
Michigan regular, not Michigan State.
Yes. Regular Michigan stayed at number 3, or was number 3. Florida State was number 4.
Yep.
I mean, I don't think anything's surprising, I guess, out of it. I don't think everybody was ready for Ohio State to be number 1 because when you watch them, they just don't seem that good, right? But when you start to incorporate the resume and stuff like that, it made sense, right? It made sense for them to be number 1. So they got put in there. Georgia, Michigan kind of got the nods of hey, they're really good. It's not their fault. They haven't played anybody. Here you guys go. And then Florida State, they said, had the best resume of the other unbeaten team. Our Huskies on the outside looking in the 5th spot.
So, Maddie, I kind of tasked you myself to making our top 6, right? When they announce the college football playoff rankings, they do a top 6 essentially. As to the teams on there, the 2 outside looking in. I don't know. It sat weird with me that Ohio State was number 1. That sits funny with me. I understand the playoff committees they're saying hey, they have the best resume right now. Their 2 wins over Ohio or over Notre Dame on the road and Penn State are 2 pretty darn good wins. They have the 2 best wins of anyone in the country. I don't really know if we can argue about that. But as you mentioned, Maddie, they don't look like the number 1 team in the country. I think that's why it sits weird with me a little bit. Putting Georgia at number 2 is a little off too. I know that the games have been a little closer than maybe we anticipate from a Georgia team, and they haven't really played a ton of tough competition. Florida State having an impressive win against LSU was one that I thought would kind of rank a little bit higher, but I guess the committee didn't value that win as much as the win at Notre Dame for Ohio State. But Maddie, when I asked you for your 6 teams, what do you got? Who's at the top of your college football playoff poll?
See, here's the thing for me. If I'm doing it, I'm copping out. I'm doing this for the playoffs, 100% based on your resume. I don't care how good you were last year. I don't care if you beat a bad team 1,000,000-0. That doesn't do it for me. I'm doing this on the resume. So I'm looking at the big games you played and how it goes, right? And as the season goes on, it shakes itself out. This way we don't have to get into any subjective arguments, right? Maybe at some point we end up with a team that has 1 loss that might be better than a team with none, and we have to deal with that. But I have a couple more weeks before I have to deal with that. So right now, if I'm ranking these teams, hey, Ohio State, you're number 1. You got the best 2 wins, right?
Yeah.
You get to be number 1. Can't stand the team. Don't think they're this good, but they get to be number 1 for now until it happens. I followed them up with Washington, actually, because like I said, I care more about your big wins than I do about you escaping a bad team. Washington hasn't looked as good since they beat Oregon. Right? I think Oregon's the single best win. Washington has the best win so far over Oregon, but they kind of felt they don't have a second win to go with it, so they can't push Ohio State. I understand the committee's idea. They kind of struggled the past couple weeks against, Arizona State. They didn't dominate those teams. Like, I get it. I get punishing them that. That's not where I'm going to go. You won, right? You won. You beat the good teams. We're moving on. Florida State, same thing. We're talking about a resume. It's there. You have a couple good wins. You beat LSU to start. Clemson's not great, but you still beat them. Duke had injuries, but you still beat them. That all counts. Georgia gets the 4th spot. It came down to Georgia, Michigan for me. That was the big debate. I have Michigan on the outside looking in. Spoiler, I think they're the best team in college football, but they've played nobody. They've just played nobody. I have nothing for my system here to put them over Georgia. Georgia at least has some quality wins, not good wins, but quality wins. And then for the same reason of looking for quality wins, I actually have Texas over Oregon for the 6th spot because Texas has that win over Bama. Right? Yeah, maybe their loss is a little worse, but again, we're talking about the wins. They have a better win than Oregon does, so they get the 6th spot for me.
I'll go in reverse order because I've got Oregon at the 6th spot. I do think that they're a good football team, and I've got Michigan at the 5. So both you and I have Michigan outside looking in. Yeah. When it comes to that, but I have Washington taking the 4 spot. I do agree that the Oregon win is really good, and it looks good on the resume. That's why I keep Oregon at number 6 there. And then I have, this is a tough one for me. I've got Ohio State at 3, and I agree with you that their resume now looks the best. But to me, I think what Florida State did to LSU is a little bit more impressive than those 2 wins, if that makes sense. That's still sticking with me. I know it was early on in the season, and sometimes that gets lost in the committee. Is like if the team does have a big win, like Florida State did have LSU, it kind of gets lost in the shuffle a little bit. But I've got them at 3, Ohio State at 3, Florida State at number 2 because I just like Florida State a little bit more, and then I have Georgia at 1, just based off of I guess prestige at this point and the fact they haven't lost and the fact that they are the defending champions. And I think for me, Maddie, I think you got to be knocked off that spot, and I don't think anyone's really done anything to knock Georgia off that spot. They've won all their games since then. I know some games have been close, but they haven't really done anything to deserve not being that number 1 team, in my opinion.
No, I mean, I fully get it. I agree. Like, I think Ohio State should slide down. Ohio State's the team for me that if they do lose a game, even if it is to Michigan, they kind of probably fall the farthest just because I really don't think they've been that good. But right now the resume says they're really good. I have no issues with that. I would say, like, if Georgia being undefeated and playing nobody's number 1, how tough was it to keep Michigan outside being undefeated, looking really good? Now, Michigan obviously isn't a back-to-back, national champion winners. They made the playoffs in back-to-back years, but they are not national champions. So, like, how hard was it to keep them out? To me, them and Georgia are kind of in the exact same boat right now.
And I think that's a very fair argument and a good conversation to have about Georgia and Michigan. But when it came to me coming down, and Michigan has handled the teams that they've had to play, right? Like, Michigan has looked good against the teams they've had to play. I personally don't think it had anything to do with Michigan. It was more of what the other teams ahead of Michigan have done. So it was one of those things where I do think, as you mentioned, Michigan could be the best team in college football right now. Just their resume is kind of tough to justify being ahead of Ohio State or even a Washington or a Florida State. There's been a few weeks now, Maddie, I don't know about you, where I've thought that Washington should sneak into that number 4 spot in just the AP poll. Where I thought that they were going to get put ahead of maybe Florida State or maybe an Ohio State at that times, because those 2 teams have kind of been flip and flop and just kind of been close. The last recent weeks, they've been pretty much the same. But I don't know. I think it's a little bit of me more respecting Washington more than Michigan in terms of just resume like that. But as you mentioned, it is interesting to look at Georgia and Michigan, to look at their schedules, look at their resume side by side, because they are pretty identical.
No, they are. And I mean, I think Georgia gets a little bit of a benefit of the doubt of being in the SEC, and they've beat some SEC teams, right? Yeah. Even though they're not that good, they beat them. Michigan's best win is Rutgers, which, hey, I mean, by the way, Rutgers has 6 wins. Like, Rutgers' record, I think, is better than anyone Georgia's beat so far, right? But, like, nobody thinks Rutgers is better than Florida or better than Kentucky. And I don't know how those games play out. I think Rutgers is very similar team to Kentucky, actually, and probably Florida. But, like, nobody thinks of Rutgers being as good as those teams, right? Yep. And so, like, Michigan's best win doesn't look as good. Like, I get the process of how we get there. It's just those two teams, to me, right now, are tied together. Now, Georgia's getting Missouri this week, which I think we're going to talk about. Mm-hmm. They have Ole Miss coming up. They also have Tennessee. They have a stretch of, I don't want to say great teams, but ranked teams that are going to give them good wins. Yeah. Michigan next weekend, right? Yeah, next weekend plays Penn State, I believe. Mm-hmm. And they'll obviously end with Ohio State. Those are their only 2 games that really matter. So, like, we're just kind of on hold with Michigan until then. There is space for both of those 2 teams to start to separate themselves. It'll come a lot quicker for Georgia. So, like, being early on them this week makes a little bit more sense to me too.
They have to go on the road to Penn State as well.
Yeah, but have you seen Penn State's offense? Like, I mean, this is conversation for next week. But, like, have we seen Penn State's offense?
I have, and I understand, but like, at Happy Valley, never know what can happen, everything like that. College football, weird sport. Don't know if you know that. We would give you another update on the Michigan cheating scandal, as it now seems like that the private investigators are now linked to Ohio State. It's weird. College football might be the best reality TV show ever, I'm pretty sure, but there's just more that keeps going on in the story and more that just keeps evolving in the story, but yeah, and then the Athletic released like a polls that they had anonymously talked to college football coaches about them wanting to do something, but them not put their name to it. It's a mess, Maddie. It's just a mess.
Here's my favorite part right now. Ryan Walters is one of the few head coaches that has put his name on it to say anything about it, right? Like everything else has been relatively anonymous. Ryan Walters, the head coach for Purdue, has put his name on saying, no, these aren't allegations. This really happened. Like, this is what's going on. Like, he's one of the few people that have actually put his name out there onto this. Guess who Michigan plays tomorrow, Tuck? Purdue. If there was ever a bet I felt good about making in my life, it's Michigan laying whatever the points are versus Purdue to go out there, sign stealing or not, and just absolutely thump Purdue into oblivion because Ryan Walters has decided to open his mouth against what's going on, like, and put a name to it.
This line for this game, by the way?
I'd lay 33.
Well, it's 32.5, so you'll be pretty comfortable if you think that they'll beat them by 33.
Oh, yes. 100%.
That's hilarious. But let's get into the Barely Bowl eligible watch schedule. If you're new here, or just to give you a little bit of a refresher, we go through each time slot. The morning, I guess, the afternoon, and then the evening time slot, the prime time slot, and we give you our favorite matchup from each of those time slots. Then we'll give you 2 wildcard games that we like from, because there's multiple good matchups each time slot. If we each have a wildcard game that we like to bring to the table as well to talk about that, and obviously the Sickos game of the week. I'm sure you guys can figure that one out. But hat tip to the Sickos committee on Twitter. Love those guys. Love everything that they do there. We like to give a nod to them there on this here program. But Maddie, let's get started with the 11 a.m., the noon kickoff. Number 23, Kansas State. Big game going on in Austin, Texas, as they travel to number 7, Texas. This game is the big noon kickoff on Fox. Matthew, first, what's your pulse on this game? What are you feeling on this matchup here?
Is Quinn Ewers playing? Question. I like Malik Murphy. I think there's talent there, but like clearly Texas took a step back without Quinn Ewers, right? They are clearly a better football team with him. It's college football. I guess they probably won't tell us until it starts. I don't know if it makes a big difference one way or the other in how I feel about this game. It's just, I would like to know that going into it because I do think there's differences there. I did actually watch a little bit of Texas, and it was at BYU as their last game. I don't think Texas was trying to show anything. I think they were just trying to scoot by and be like, yeah, we're better. We can just go out here and play ball and win. I really don't think that Sark was out there trying to show anything because this offense is going to look a little different with Murphy playing quarterback. He's an athlete. He can run. He can move. He throws a really nice deep ball. Those are all things that Quinn Ewers hasn't done very good this year, like things he hasn't done well. So I think the offense for Texas might look a little different. And I wonder what that looks like for K-State when it actually sees it. When K-State gets on the field, sees Texas athletes, Texas 5-star athletes go out there, and then all of a sudden this offense looks a little different than what you've seen from Texas last week, anytime under Murphy, or even most of this year. It might be a little bit of a surprise. And on top of it, K-State's pass defense has been bad this year. Like, that's where they've really, really struggled. It's tough to run against them, but they've really struggled against the pass. Like, if Malik Murphy has more in the tank as a passer, especially early in this game, I could see Texas maybe jumping out to a relatively early lead just because of that. I think they try to tuck stuff away, and I think they might be able to take advantage. That's the best way to beat K-State. Put them in a hole early, get Avery Johnson off the field, make Will Howard throw the football. That's a recipe for success if you're the Longhorns.
The Cats have cooked the past couple weeks, too. They've put up some big scores. They've cruised. They haven't really seen a ton of adversity. Probably since the Texas Tech game when Avery did come in and he had that huge game, 5-touchdown game. Avery played great, played well. It seems like they're committed to Will Howard, though, when it comes to the quarterback circumstance. At least starting, at least getting the
choice,
the lion's share of the snaps. Looks like it is Will Howard, but you mentioned just this matchup as a whole in terms of like the Big 12. This is it's a big matchup. They're tied in terms of overall conference record. 4-1 for both of these two teams. There's a logjam in the Big 12
like
right
five
now.
Teams, isn't it?
Yeah, it's Oklahoma, Oklahoma State, Iowa State, Texas, and Kansas State all tied right now for first place. Now, I think tiebreakers gives Oklahoma the number one right now, but we're going to talk about who Oklahoma's playing this week. But Iowa State's got a big game coming up against Kansas, there's two teams tied for second place now in the Big 12 at a 3-2 record. That's a big matchup coming up as well in the Big 12. But just in terms of conference implications, it's probably Big 12 title or bust, I would say, for Texas at least. I think they really need to win the Big 12 title this year. We talked about them even sneaking into the playoffs. They have to win out if they want to do that, especially after losing to Oklahoma and Oklahoma taking that loss to Kansas. They have to win out. They have to even win the conference championship, I think, to even be in the discussion for the college football playoffs. So a lot of implications. Both of these teams are probably keenly aware of the implications of this game because Kansas State, if they want to make it back to Arlington, they're going to have to win this game. Can they make it back as the second place team? Probably, but it's going to be a whole lot harder if they don't end up winning this game against Texas. Huge matchup, lots of conference implications to it as well. It does still seem like, Maddie, I was looking as you were talking, if Quinn Ewers' availability still up in the air. So still up in the air for them there, and I'm sure, as you mentioned, it being college football, we're not going to know until he literally steps out on the field at 11 a.m. Central Time. So we will see there.
No, I want to be very clear. Like when I talked at the beginning, I kind of made it sound like I think Texas wins this game easily. And I don't know if that's the case, right? I know last year they jumped on K-State real early. And I think that is what Sark can do for you, right? In a big game, Sark can come out with some stuff that just absolutely breaks opposing defenses. And if that happens in this game, I think it's going to be difficult for K-State to get back in because, again, like I said, just that passing game against this Texas pass rush probably doesn't strike me as a great way for K-State to keep up. But if K-State can fight and claw and stay close and turn it into a garbage disposal type game like they like to do, that's what they have their path to win. I think they're going to have to use Avery Johnson's legs a little bit more, right? Like I think last week he barely played. I don't think that they can go that route again. Like he's got to be out there. I don't think they're going to pick apart this Texas Longhorns defense. So like there is a path for K-State winning. I would be nervous as a Wildcat fan that early in this game, start bust out these deep things, hitting A.D. Mitchell, hitting Xavier Worthy deep down the field on some deep play action stuff, or just getting Murphy on the move and actually using his athleticism, because that's something they didn't show at all this past week when they're their last game. But during their spring game, he was running all over the place. That was part of his recruitment process, was how good of an athlete he is at his size. So I just think they are going to come out and show K-State stuff they're probably not ready for. And when you're K-State, and most teams you play in the Big 12, you are just as athletic, if not more athletic than. But then you hit Texas, and that first couple drives, you're like, oh, like, okay, these guys are definitely different. I think you can see that jump on them early, and it happened last year, and it might happen again this year. So like that's the one thing I'd be worried about if I was a K-State fan here.
I agree. Maddie, before we get into picks, we've talked about these two teams a decent amount this year. I don't know if there's any like matchups
Right.
or players that you want to hit on. Obviously, the big hitters for Texas, they got that great wide receiver room. They got the A.D. Mitchell. They got your Xavier Worthy. Jonathan Brooks has been playing incredibly well. I don't think he's draft eligible though. He's a sophomore, right? Is that off the top of my head?
Yes, but I actually was looking. Is he like one of those guys that's like a sophomore, but like not a sophomore?
He could be.
Yeah,
could be.
he is draft eligible. He's a redshirt sophomore.
Ooh.
So that was the one guy I wanted to go with because we've talked about everybody else. K-State's run defense is pretty good, right? K-State's run defense is pretty good. So I'm not expecting a huge game, but if they have to rely on Brooks, they absolutely can, right? They can absolutely do that. And then, so they're going to sit there and rely on Jonathan Brooks a little bit if they have to. And my big thing was I wanted to go into is there's no RB1 for this draft class right now. It's completely up in the air. Jonathan Brooks wants to start stringing together a strong back half of this year. He could put his name up there. So yeah, he is a guy to keep an eye on while you're not watching the 18 wide receivers that Texas has out there.
They got so many good ones, man. They got so many good ones. You know, Kansas State probably just wants to spare them one because Kansas State in need of some weapons here. But Maddie, looking at the line here for Kansas State and Texas. Texas only favored by 4 points at home. You got a feeling either way on this one, and how are you going to pick it?
I mean, I didn't want to just be like all Texas, all against K-State here because I think this is a good matchup. I just think about this game and like I trust going into the first quarter that Steve Sarkisian's going to have the good stuff. And I really do think, I believe in my heart that they were hiding stuff this past week. I don't think that they didn't even struggle. The offense just didn't look great their last game. But I think if you watch them, it was just very mundane. It was very vanilla. This is something that we are very predisposed to here as Chiefs fans as well, to seeing a vanilla game script. And then all of a sudden it blows up when they have a game that matters. I just have a feeling that that's this game. I'm taking Texas, laying the points specifically because I think they jump out early and I just don't trust Will Howard to have to play catch up. And I think that removes Avery Johnson from the game script a little too much.
Kansas State's been pretty good at covering this season, 6-2 this year. Texas 4-4 against the spread. An interesting note from DraftKings Sportsbook here. Kansas State has covered the spread in 8 of its last 9 games against conference opponents. All signs point to take Kansas State. I'm with you though, Maddie. I like Texas too much. I think it's got a lot of talent, a lot of high potent power that they can kind of go with on that offensive side of the ball. I like Texas in this matchup, and let's keep it in the Big 12. Maddie, let's go to. It sucks that this will be the last Bedlam game for a while, for the foreseeable future, as number 9 Oklahoma will travel to Stillwater for the last Bedlam game, as I mentioned, to take on Oklahoma State. The game is on ABC at 2:30, 3:30 Eastern in Stillwater. Maddie, first thoughts on this one and it being the last Bedlam game for a while.
Oh, it's going to be wild. That's my thoughts. It's going to be wild. This game's always wild, right? Like this game is never normal. It's never simple. It's never clean. This is going to be the wildest of wilds. Oklahoma, we're not talking about like players necessarily yet, but like Oklahoma's best defensive player, the linebacker Stutzman, might be out or is going to be injured. And when he's not on the field, that defense looks a lot worse than when he is out there. I think he is a little bit of a game time decision, right? So if Danny Stutzman can't play, all of a sudden now you're looking at an Oklahoma State offense that's figured out what their identity is. They know how they want to play football right now. And if that happens, like, hey, Oklahoma State's been on a tear these past few weeks. They've been playing good football. They figured out what they want to do. And then they have a chance to send the Sooners packing to the SEC with back-to-back losses, get them out of the Big 12 championship race, and completely eliminate any playoff hopes, make them look as bad as possible. Hey, listen, if there would be something that's a Bedlam game right there, that's it.
I saw something that historically this series is not like close, right? Oklahoma dominates this series when it comes to just head to head. But when you look at it from once Mike Gundy took over, he has a third. He's accounted for a third of Oklahoma State's wins in the series. So
good coach.
He is a good coach. And these games, as you mentioned, Maddie, have been absolutely insane. As of late, and really ever since I can remember, when it comes to just these two teams and the way they match up with each other, you just kind of throw the records out the window when it comes to these two getting together. And you look at the Big 12 standings, as I mentioned earlier, two of the teams tied for the first team in the Big 12. Lots of conference implications on this as well. You don't even have to throw in all of them leaving the conference and leaving this rivalry behind. It's in Stillwater. I just don't know, Maddie. This game is just a recipe for a weird one. I saw this come up on the timeline earlier today. There's a report that Oklahoma wide receiver Jalil Farouk was arrested on Thursday while driving erratically. I think his future or his status for the game could be in question on that. So let's talk about some players, Maddie, in this game, because there's one player. I feel like we haven't talked about Oklahoma State a whole lot recently, or really this year, because coming into it, they were one of those teams where, like, I don't think they were going to be very good, but they've had one guy that's really rose to the top and has become a quick star. Now he leads the country in rushing yards, and Ollie Gordon. Man, I wouldn't have saw that coming with wins over Kansas and Kansas State. Ollie Gordon having big performances in those games as well. Who are you watching for in this game?
I mean, it's going to be hard to watch this game and not watch Ollie Gordon. Unfortunately, not draft eligible, so that's a pickle. Correct. But I already mentioned it. If Danny Stutzman isn't playing linebacker for Oklahoma, Oklahoma's run defense hasn't been very good this year in general, right? It hasn't been very good. So that's already looking well for somebody like Ollie Gordon. But then you add on top of it, right, that if Stutzman's out, like that's starting to look real dicey there for him. So it's just, that is, you're going to have your eyes on Ollie Gordon. On the flip side, I do think that Colin Oliver, the linebacker edge for Oklahoma State, he is their defensive player that seems to make a lot of big plays. He seems to be the guy they kind of funnel a lot of stuff through. He's really good at football. So he's a guy that's going to be trying to slow down that Oklahoma offense that I don't understand why it's good. Like, it's kind of good, but they just kind of spread it out. They throw everything to the sideline in the flats, and they just try to be like better athletes than you. But like I said last week, when I was picking KU to cover, I didn't think KU would win, but like to cover, I don't think that Oklahoma has rare athletes. They have good athletes.
Yeah.
I don't think Oklahoma right now is recruiting the rare athletes. So I don't even know if they're just going to be able to rely on athleting Oklahoma State. And you want to tell me that Mike Gundy has Oklahoma State ready to punch these guys in the mouth with these guys? Like, hey, it's gonna be a fun game. I don't think there's quite as many draft prospects from this game as we would normally expect. Right. Like I said, Colin Oliver versus Guyton, the right tackle for Oklahoma. That's probably your best prospect on prospect matchup. Guyton is probably a fringe first rounder right now. See how he handles Oliver and that speed rush off the outside.
Oklahoma favored by 6 points going on the road. So you got a 6-point home dog in Oklahoma State in the last Bedlam game for the foreseeable future, to a team that has chosen to leave for the SEC and kind of leave Oklahoma State high and dry. There's some animosity there. Plus, you mix in the Big 12 championship implications. I don't know, Maddie, if at the beginning of the year, if I would have told you that Oklahoma State was going to be in the mix for the Big 12 title game in Arlington, I don't know if you'd believe me, truthfully. But they've had a good resurrection here of their season. Let me give you some stats before we make it.
Oh, please.
Let me give you some stats. This is in Boom Pickens, obviously. The underdog has covered the spread in 8 of Oklahoma State's last 9 games at Boone Pickens. Looking at their against the spread records, OU is 6-2, Oklahoma State 5-3. I'm riding with the Pokes. I just think there's too much momentum on the Pokes side right now to go against OU. Now, OU is coming off of a, you could say, embarrassing loss to Kansas, a team that they historically have beaten pretty well. And I think there was a 16, 17, 18 game winning streak going up against the Jayhawks. I guess Kansas sacrificed that for the Chiefs one against the Broncos. But they snapped that streak. They're probably going to be a motivated team coming into this, obviously. But, Maddie, your pick here is I'm sticking with Oklahoma State. I'm taking the +6 for the Cowboys.
Yeah, I'm going to take the Pokes, too. I think this is a high-scoring game. I think they're going to go back and forth. I don't think either defense is going to get a ton of stops, and I think it's kind of going to go back on whoever has the ball last. Obviously, a full touchdown for Oklahoma wins the game, but like I'm going to think it comes down to a field goal or something like that. I wouldn't be surprised if Oklahoma State wins outright, but I'm definitely going to take them with the points here. I think this is a tight game all the way through, and the way Gundy has this team playing, if there was ever a game for the Big 12 to be like, hey, like let's get some Pac-12 refs cooking in here. Let's get some ref screw job action. Like, this is it. To just completely stick it to a team leaving. Like, I know we don't want to talk about it, but we said it. This is college football. It would make a great reality TV show. You want to get some ref home cooking right now? Oklahoma getting sent out with an L? I don't know.
Woo! I'd love it. Hey, if you're feeling a little adventurous, friends of DraftKings Sportsbook have plus 200 on the money line there for the Pokes. I might dabble a couple bucks on that one because I think that it could be an outright win for Oklahoma State. Now let's move on to the night slate. Not big. This isn't Pac-12 after dark. This is Pac-12 at an appropriate hour of the night. I don't know if that rolls off the tongue as well. But at 6:30 Central, 7:30 Eastern, number 5 Washington will take on number 20 USC. They're going to be playing that game in Los Angeles, California, at the Coliseum. This game is on ABC, so just keep your TV on ABC. Roll right into Washington at USC. Maddie, first feelings on this game, as we're both very high on the Washington Huskies.
Listen, to quote the great Josh Gannon here, phew, 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 phew. That's what this game is. This is points. This is points. This game's going to be a shootout. Every now in the NFL, you get two offenses that are really good. They play each other. You expect a shootout, and then it undoubtedly ends up as a stinker, right? And the defense is just figured out. This is college football. It ain't happening. I've watched USC's defense play. That team ain't stopping nobody right now. These teams are going to put up points. And Washington, while has a not good Power 5 defense, like they're objectively not good, they aren't terrible. They aren't pathetic. USC's defense is pathetic right now. So, like, this game is going to be a lot of points. It's going to be, I think, Caleb Williams having to chase a lot of points, which is going to equate to a ton of highlight plays. And you're probably going to get some wonky Caleb plays that kind of keep getting filed away into do we really want to draft him first overall kind of scouting report? Because he's starting to rack those up now. So I do think this is going to be a fun game. I think it's going to be the game, like, if you want to show a non-football fan why you love college football, you put this game on, because I think you're just going to have a lot of fun trying to watch it. It's like, I'm here for that, Tuck.
I am too. And you mentioned the offense of Washington. Man, I have so much fun watching the Washington Huskies on the offensive side of the ball. Michael Penix has done an incredible, I don't really even want to say 180 to his career, because it's not like he was a bad quarterback at Indiana, but he's been a whole lot better of a quarterback at Washington. And he's put himself in the Heisman conversation. You're looking at a guy who has 24 touchdowns to 6 interceptions. He's averaging 368 yards per game, Matthew. They are slinging that rock all over the field.
Do you want to hear the wildest stat?
Yes, I do. I actually would, yes.
Okay. I saw this today. Michael Penix, in 6 years of playing college football now, right? Mm-hmm. 6 years, has taken less sacks in his collegiate career than Caleb Williams has this year. Caleb Williams has taken more sacks just this season than Michael Penix has through 6 years. Now, there was injuries throughout Michael Penix's career. It's not like he has played 10 plus games every single year, but he has still played college football for 6 years, started quarterback numerous seasons, and has taken less career sacks than Caleb Williams has this year.
That's insane. I had to let that one breathe for a little bit because, wow. You've shook me to the core, Matthew, when it comes to that. But because that kind of brings me to what I was going to lead into here about, like, Caleb Williams. Like, is he broken, Maddie? Because it seems like every game it's just like we look and this guy's supposed to be a surefire number 1 overall pick, and I watch it and I'm just not sold on. I don't know what it is about. Oh, it's his. I know exactly what it is. Truthfully, it's the fact that in script, in the boundaries of a play, he doesn't look as good as some of these other quarterbacks do. But, like, outside of a play, you get him to play like street ball, like roll the ball out there, just play ball. He looks phenomenal. I mean, he looks like Patrick Mahomes sometimes on some of these throws.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's one of those things where I'm just like, I don't think that this guy is just like, okay, a lock for number 1 overall when you got guys like Marvin Harrison Jr. out there that could be competing for that number 1 overall pick.
Yeah, I don't think Caleb Williams is broken. I just think that there was a few more weaknesses to his game that were hidden by the highest levels of talent. He
Hmm.
moved to a new conference with a very good offensive-minded coach, and you didn't see it as much last year. If you had to squint to find it, and I think some people talked about it. And I think this year you have more people preparing to play Caleb Williams. I think he's frustrated that his wide receivers this year without Jordan Addison aren't as good. I think he's frustrated
True.
that his defense is still equally as bad. And this goes back to something that was kind of brewing in Oklahoma, and this is like an off-season podcast topic, but like what are Lincoln Riley's kind of practices like? What's going on there? His teams always seem to kind of lack a level of intensity. They don't seem to ever just have it. They don't ever seem to have an intensity. I don't say they don't have confidence. They don't have swagger, whatever you want to call it. They don't have intensity. And you just wonder if you go into these practices, is the defense just letting the offense be good?
Yeah.
Are they really trying to push back? Because you watch this defense and sometimes you can honestly not tell me that defense has any idea how to play football. And then sometimes the offense just doesn't seem to understand how to counter what defenses are doing. So I have more Lincoln Riley questions after 2 years at USC than I think a lot of other people should. So I don't know. I think Caleb Williams still a very good prospect. I don't think he's the next Patrick Mahomes because I've seen him lose way too often in traditional ways that Patrick Mahomes does not do and has really never done in the NFL. So I don't know if I'm ready to tout him as that yet, but he is still very worthy of going with the top 1 or 2 picks in the NFL draft.
All right, fine. I will. I'll cool it on the Caleb Williams discourse, on the Caleb Williams broken discourse. But this game, Matty, is interesting because I think at this point USC doesn't have a whole lot to play for as a team when it comes down to college football playoff. What are they going to play in a better bowl game before Christmas? Are they going to play in a better bowl game before New Year? Sure, but like at this point, I mean, you look at the Pac-12 standings. Washington right now undefeated in the conference. USC is a one-loss team in the conference, with Oregon as a one-loss team in the conference. They're ahead of Oregon just because they have 5. We went over this a couple weeks ago about just them playing more conference games right now. But at 7-2, I don't know. How do you see this game going? Is this one where you could see maybe more of the Caleb Williams just like, you know what, screw it, let's just kind of air this sucker out there, let's just go and play balls to the wall? Or is it one of those that you could see, Washington kind of cruising?
Oh, I mean, I think it's going to be back and forth for a little while. The problem is, I just think Washington has more answers. I think Washington's defense with Braylon Trice and some of those guys, they have some guys that are going to go play in the NFL on that defense, right? And I think that they are going to be able to get a couple stops here and there. I don't know if USC is going to be able to get those same stops. So I just think Washington's going to have a few more answers to what USC has. And Washington has better receivers with Rome Odunze, Jalen Polk, Jalen McMillan. I guess his status is still completely up in the air, but they've been doing good without him at times too. So I think it's very back and forth. I think you see a ton of points. I trust Washington's offensive scheme more right now. It's not as gimmicky. It's just straight up good execution. And I don't think USC can stop straight up good execution. So I'm taking the Huskies in this one. I'm laying the 3 points. I'm taking the Huskies to win. I think throughout the whole game, it might be close. I just trust the Huskies to get 1, 2, 3 stops throughout the game, not even by great play, but just adequate play. And I don't know if USC is going to give me that ever. USC's only hope is Michael Penix being off on some deep throws. That's their only hope. And I can't ride with the team that's just hoping for the other quarterback to miss throws.
I'm with you on that one. I like Washington in this one as well, more than 3 points. I think it will be here. I'll say it, Maddie. I think it's a 2-score game. I think Washington shows why they are the top dogs in the Pac-12 and should deservedly need a spot in the college football playoff as the team ranked 24th in the AP poll. This is a fun one, Maddie. It's a fun stat from DraftKings Sportsbook. The team ranked 24th in the AP poll has failed to cover the spread in each of its last 6 games. Guess where USC is in the AP poll? That's right. Number 24.
I'm going to guess 24th.
Yep. Nailed it. Yes. We're both taking the Huskies. Maddie, we are in lockstep this week. Maybe that's not a good thing. Dubs up on all of our picks so far. We have been in lockstep.
Let's get off. Let's get funky with it. What do we got next? What's our wild cards?
I think that this one we might not be lockstep in, as number 12 Missouri heads to Athens, Georgia. It goes between the hedges at 2:30. This is the first wild card game that we got on here. It's on CBS. Georgia favored by 15 points in this one. Maddie, thoughts on this one? I want to hear your thoughts on this one before I give some of mine.
My thoughts are Eli should get on the phone with the College Football Playoff Committee and cuss them out for making Kirby Smart's Georgia Bulldogs not number one. The amount of fuel that was just given to Kirby for this game because the playoff committee put Georgia not at number one, it is going to fuel Georgia enough for the rest of the season that Kirby is going to convince all of those players that they are no longer elite, that they are just Jags, that they are just these bums that are expected to go 500, that can't play, that aren't good enough. And unfortunately for Missouri, they are the first team up coming into Athens, Georgia to play the Bulldogs fresh off of this. And it's not as if Georgia hadn't been playing better football the past couple weeks. They had also been turning it up already, even without Brock Bowers. So I think Missouri is unfortunately walking into a literal lion's den right now because of the College Football Playoff Committee.
That was my first thought when I saw Georgia at number 2. I said, great. That's just great. Now we got to deal with that. Kirby Smart, we know, is going to make up anything to motivate his team as he did last year. And now he doesn't have to make it up. He didn't have to make it up anymore. So that's a little disappointing. But I do think that there's a lot of implications for both teams riding on this game. It becomes a whole lot harder for Georgia to win the SEC. Well, they'll need help to win the SEC East if they do lose to Missouri. Missouri is basically out of it at that point because I don't think they can get as many wins as Georgia can get in the SEC East. Implications in that in terms of the title game. But I don't think that Georgia's going to take Missouri lightly anyway because of how Missouri played against Georgia last season. And that was their closest game. It's been their closest game for, well, maybe not a while, but they did have some close calls against South Carolina. I think was only a 1-score game. Auburn was a close game that probably shouldn't have been as close as it should have been. So they've had some closer calls this year, but then they came out and they just pummeled Florida, as they should, because I don't think we've been pretty clear on the show that we don't think Florida's that good of a football team. I think that kind of showed on last Saturday. But I think that Missouri's better than Florida. I think that Missouri is probably one of the better teams that they've had to play up until this point this year.
Agree.
And it might be the best team because I was looking over their schedule. They played like UT Martin, Ball State, Auburn's still down. I don't think they play LSU. So I think that their crossover game is Auburn and Ole Miss. So they'll play Ole Miss next week. They play Tennessee the week after that. They've got some big games coming up, and this is just the first one. It's an interesting matchup because Missouri's offense has been playing a whole lot better. One of the reasons Missouri didn't win last year was because Missouri's offense kept shooting themselves in the foot. The defense kept them in it. Yeah. The offense couldn't convert. They get a lot better of an offense. Their defense hasn't been as good as maybe we anticipated them to be. It's going to be an interesting one because Georgia will be without Brock Bowers, but they look just fine without Brock Bowers against Florida. And I think that their offense has been humming really this whole year. They've been kind of a low key dominant on the offensive side of the ball.
So yeah, and like before the college football playoff stuff, which I know is kind of silly, I think to some to say, oh, now Georgia's going to be motivated, but like I honestly think that matters a little bit here.
Yeah,
and sure. I mean, like on top, how it's got to be so stale for Kirby and those Georgia Bulldogs. Oh, we're the best team again after we've won for the past 700 days. We've been the best team. Like, you know what I mean? Like it's got to be stale. So like they get that motivation refresh, and then matchup wise, I do think Missouri does pose some problems for a lot of teams in college football that are even more talented than them. The problem is those issues come from this. Luther Burden aligns in the slot and works vertical, works shallow, it just draws so much attention and makes a lot of big plays, but draws a ton of attention. And that allows the OEs, that allows guys like Mookie Cooper, or even creating space for Cody Schrader. They're creating space for all these other guys to take advantage of one-on-ones and for Brady Cook to just kind of get them the football. The thing with Georgia is, okay, even if you create those spaces, do we really like Theo Weiss versus Kamari Lassiter, a potential first-round corner? Like, do we really like that matchup, right? Do we really like the matchups we're getting, even if Luther Burden gives us some space? And oh, by the way, Georgia has Malachi Starks might be the best defensive back in all of college football. He's an underclassman. He plays safety. He also kicks into the slot some too. Like, I just think Georgia has the answers for what Missouri likes to do. Missouri, I think, has a chance, but it would have to be them going crazy in the passing game, getting the ball deep downfield, hitting these open shots over what is a very good secondary. Georgia's front seven has been okay this year. They're not rushing the passer great. They're okay versus the run, but they just haven't been dominant. But the thing that worries me is just that secondary is really good, and I think that's where Missouri's been taking advantage of teams. So I just don't know if they're going to find that same space they can against most other teams, and can't sleep on the Dominic Lovett revenge game.
Yeah.
He's come on the last 2 weeks. Bowers is out. Ladd McConkey's cooking. Carson Beck's cooking. Dominic Lovett's starting to come on just a little bit. You start paying attention too much to Ladd McConkey putting it over on you. There goes the Dominic Lovett deep ball. So it's just, can't sleep on the revenge game.
Yeah, you really can't.
And Amarius Mims might play. Offensive tackle for Georgia has been trying to give it a go the past 2 weeks. He might be back for this game. I don't know for sure yet. Again, college football, who knows? But he might be back, and that'll be helpful for that offensive line too.
It would be. No, it's one of those matchups where could Missouri win? Absolutely. But what has to happen for Missouri to win? I think Missouri cannot make any mistakes, and Georgia has to make a few. The margin of error for Missouri is very slim in this game. It's a very slim margin of error for the Tigers. I think that they can keep it competitive. 15 points is the spread, Maddie. A couple of quick notes. Georgia's covered the spread in 7 of its last 8 games against AP-ranked teams. Missouri 6-3 against the spread this year. Georgia 3-5 and hasn't been a very good covering team this year. 15 points. That's more than 2 possessions, Maddie. Who are you taking in this one?
Yeah, I'm going to ride with the Bulldogs for a kind of a lot of what we just said. I was ready to take Missouri. I really was. Even with the tough matchup, I was still ready to take them. I just think that they are going to be out to kind of prove a point, right? I think they're going to be out to prove a point. And if you look, since that Auburn game, which was a 1-score win, which I think was probably the last game that Georgia didn't cover, what have they done? 3 straight games now? They've covered 3 straight games. I think against this, maybe Vandy covered. So maybe it's just 2 out of 3, but still they've played better against the good teams. They're like, hey, you guys think we're down. You guys think that we can't beat teams by multiple scores. Here we go. I unfortunately think Missouri is a victim to that.
Yeah, I'm going to take Missouri to cover just based off of pride maybe. But I think Missouri can keep it within 2 scores. I'm looking at the Vandy game. Yes, they did not cover. It was wait.
They won by 17, I think. So
32.5 was the spread in that game. They covered against Kentucky, which they rolled over Kentucky. Looking at Kentucky's not actually that good. Same thing with Florida. It looks like they're not actually that good as well. South Carolina kept it close.
They did.
It was 24-14, so it was a 10-point game. It was a 2-possession game at the end of it. But I think Missouri can keep it close like that. I do ultimately think that it might end up being a 2-possession game, like a 10-point, maybe 14-point game. But 3-possession, from a Missouri fans' perspective, I think I would be a little disappointed if it was a 3-possession game where Missouri gets, blown out at that point. That would be a little disappointing, especially for the season that they're having and how the team has played. Listen, Missouri knows the implication of this game. Missouri knows everything that's going to go into it. But listen, if you want more of my Mizzou takes, if you say, hey, this guy's got good Mizzou takes, go listen to the Mizzou That's Who podcast, where I dive into this game a whole lot more with Gabe DeArmond and Maggie Johnson. That you can find out wherever you find your podcast. But Maddie, let's get into the last wildcard game. We're staying in the SEC. I was looking at this when we were going over the last game. Both of our wildcard games, SEC games. We did not do any SEC games in our regular schedule. We did Big 12 and Pac-12 SEC games in the wildcard slots.
Listen, this game is a banger. LSU at Bama. LSU at Bama in Alabama. Going there. LSU gets that one last possession win last year against Bama. Looking great. Brian Kelly's living life. He's feeling great about himself. Now they got to go to Bama. You got the revenge game. You got Nick Saban loving life this year. You got Nick Saban, this Alabama Crimson Tide, playing good football, playing football in the exact way that Nick Saban wants to play football. This is where I thought Alabama was going to go. This is the game, right, that tilts it one way or the other. Alabama can muddy this game up. They can come out on top, win a 1-score game, and ride themselves off to the SEC championship and a chance to play Georgia and do the same thing. And there we're talking in the year that Alabama was down. They don't know who their quarterback is. They're benching their quarterback. And here's Bama rolling into the college football playoff. I am so here for it because I think Nick Saban is having a grand time. That said, dog, one of the top dogs, one of the biggest dogs we have going right now, LSU's quarterback Jaden Daniels on the other side. He is going to have something to say about it. This game is fascinating. LSU's offense is great. So is Bama's defense. Bama's offense is fine. LSU's defense is terrible. So, like, I don't know how this is going to go. I could see it going either way when these two teams play, but, like, I really do love this matchup.
Alabama 5-0 in the conference right now, behind Ole Miss and LSU, who are both 4-1. This does have some conference game implications. Look, both sides of the SEC having conference game implication games coming up on this week 10 here in college football. But you're right. This is a good one. This is a very, very good game. And look, we put this as a wild card game next to a Washington USC game that is very good as well. So you're going to have some bangers to watch on the night slate. Bama favored by 3 points in this one in Tuscaloosa. 3-point home favorite. So there must be saying that this would be a toss-up at a neutral site game. Maddie, do you agree with that?
Man, I don't think so. I don't think the books are adjusting to what Bama's been. I think everyone's still a little stuck on that USF game where Alabama was trying backup quarterbacks and then stuck on the Texas loss, which, like, fair. Like, I get that those things happen, but I don't think that people have adjusted to what this Alabama team is. This defense is really good. This is one of the best defenses in the country. I think, especially in college football, good offenses beat good defenses. But Alabama's one of the few teams that have told us, like, hey, not always. We sometimes can come in with this defensive game plan that really slows it down. If I remember correctly, LSU starting right tackle was on crutches at the end of the last game. I don't know if he's going to play. That's big when you got Dallas Turner and Chris Braswell across from you in this Alabama Crimson Tide defense. Bama has the athletes to keep up with Malik Neighbors, with Brian Thomas, to chase down Jaden Daniels. Like, I don't think LSU will just be able to out-athlete them. You are going to have an elite game from Daniels and Neighbors. Like, these guys are going to have to play perfect, I think, to beat this Alabama defense. And on the flip side, LSU's like entire secondary is hurt. They're playing all the guys that were on the roster 2 years ago when they got there. They brought in transfers to play over, and all the transfers are hurt. And what is the one thing that Jalen Milroe can do? Throw the ball downfield. You watch Missouri play LSU. What is something that LSU can't defend? The passing game downfield. So things aren't aligning very well for me in my mind for LSU. I don't want to pick against them because I like the talent, but everything about this game screams Bama. So, like, I'm spoiling it. I'm taking Bama laying the points here, but, like, it should be a good game. It's just everything about this matchup tells me that the Crimson Tide are winning.
Both teams 5-3 against the spread this year. Bama, as you mentioned, 3-point favorite. If you're feeling dangerous, LSU moneyline 136. I'm going to take LSU because I think it's like a 1-point game. I think it's a 1-point game, and I think that it's one of those that's back and forth. I think it's going to be a really good football game. Obviously, number 8 versus number 13. No duh, it's going to be a really good football game, and especially in the at Tuscaloosa at Bryant Denny. There's a lot there that I think is a great recipe for some just a classic college football game. I think we're in for a vintage ending, and that's why I think it's going to be close to a 1-point game there, Maddie. Is you ready to roll on to the Sickos game of the week? We don't need to spend a lot of time on this one, truthfully.
Yeah. And I really quick, I'd also say Mekhi Wingo also injured for LSU. Just a lot of injuries. Everything about this game is telling me that Alabama wins, and we have to start talking Bama versus Georgia for a shot at the college football playoff, right back where we've been for the past half decade.
Just when we thought we were away from it, Maddie. Just when we thought we were away.
Man, can you wait until Bama beats Georgia by 1 point in the SEC championship game, and we have to talk about how we get 2 SEC teams in the college football playoff? Let's go.
It's going to happen. It's destiny almost at this point. Wow. Time is a flat circle, truly. And another thing that is a flat circle is Iowa being in the Sickos game of the week. Listen, Maddie, it doesn't get more sickos than this. It really doesn't. Like, this is a textbook definition of if you're watching this game, you're a college football sicko. Iowa takes on Northwestern. It's in Chicago, obviously, because that's where Northwestern is. But they're not playing this on a football field. They're playing it at Wrigley Field. I don't know if you've seen the picture. I've retweeted on my Twitter at Tucker D. Franklin if you want to go take a look at it. They've got like cut-ins to the stands because a football field doesn't quite fit at Wrigley Field. And this game's on Peacock as well. So it's like there's just like so much that goes into it that makes this a sickos game. Iowa favored by 4.5 points. Thoughts on this one, Maddie? We really don't have to spend that much time on it.
We're not spending much time here. Northwestern, better than everybody thought this year, right?
Mm-hmm.
Credit to Northwestern for putting together a competent football team. Okay, Iowa. Brian Ferentz is out at the end of the year. He's donezo, but he's coaching out the rest of this year. Is Brian Ferentz about to throw caution into the wind and just try to light it up because he doesn't care? Or is Brian Ferentz going to double down so unbelievably hard and run his garbage offense into the ground to try to prove that it works and somehow score even less points? I don't know. And it's on a baseball field. The over-under is somehow 30.5, hammering the under. No chance. No chance am I taking the over of 30.5 at that windy baseball stadium for this game. I don't know. Give me Northwestern. I don't like the vibes of Iowa. Kirk Ferentz did not like what happened. He did not like how this firing of Brian Ferentz, his son got fired without his approval, and he's the head coach. He wasn't a fan of how that had to happen. Vibes are off. Iowa Hawkeyes going down. Give me Northwestern in Wrigley.
Northwestern in Wrigley. Maddie, didn't Iowa just set like the record? It was Iowa, Minnesota, right? For the lowest lowest point total set in a game.
Hey, guess what? They went under.
And it went under. I think actually they've been a part of like 3 of the lowest unders of all time. Lowest point total set, and they all went under. And I think that this is very close to what it was, like 30.5. Like I think this is like what it was. It might tie the record.
I thought the record was 29.5.
Okay, it might be that.
I think it was.
Okay, then it ended up closing. Holy cow. That's insane.
I don't know how this isn't lower. I honestly don't know how this isn't lower. I really think there might be a bump that, Brian Ferentz might just like air it out. But have you seen Deacon Jones? Is it Deacon Jones? Deacon whoever the quarterback is. Have you seen him throw a football? You add some wind to that. I guess the wind might make him more accurate. It can't make him less accurate. So like maybe there's a chance, but like these teams can't throw. I don't know, man. This game's going to go by in an hour and 42 minutes. Just going to run
the football.
Run, punt. Please don't fair catch it, Cooper DeJean. You're our only shot at points.
You are our only hope. Deacon Hill, by the way.
Yeah. I knew it was a Deacon.
Yeah.
Deacon Jones is another quarterback, isn't he? Isn't that a quarterback
from like a long time ago, right?
Oh no, Deacon Jones, defensive lineman from even before my time. So like, never mind. Like where? Yeah. Anywho,
isn't he like 300 or 258? God,
Deacon Jones and Deacon Hill are about the same size.
They really are.
Football, and one was a D tackle or D end.
Oh my gosh.
What are we doing? This is what happens when you get to a sicko game played at Wrigley. I mean, listen,
one
simply doesn't walk into Wrigley Field and beat Northwestern.
Those hallowed halls of Wrigley Field, known for its college football.
If I'm not mistaken, the last time a game was at Wrigley Field, they had to like get up and move the broadcast booth or whatever, like to different spots throughout the game so they could like see stuff properly. If I'm not mistaken, they had to move part of the broadcast team around during the game, like to see different stuff.
They might actually have to. I was trying to see what other games they've played at Wrigley Field. Golly, just Northwestern Iowa is just so poetic. Like, it's just like, yes, that game deserves to be on there. Did Nebraska play there one year? Did they put Nebraska Northwestern at Wrigley Field one year?
Sounds right. I mean, sure. I don't know who plays there. It's wild. Illinois went in there and like boat raced them, didn't they?
Could have been.
I feel like Illinois went in there and beat them down.
Yep. So 2010. The 2010 game versus Illinois was the first football game at Wrigley Field since December 13th of 1970, where the Bears beat the Packers. But then, yeah, and then they played 2011 against Purdue. So 2010 Illinois, 2011 Purdue, and then 2023. This is the first year they've had it back.
Well, there's a reason it keeps going away, and I really wish they'd quit trying.
I agree. I wish they would quit trying, and we're going to put it out of its misery. Like, we're going to put this show out of its misery, Maddie. That's going to do it for this week's edition of Barely Below Eligible. Appreciate you guys hanging out with us here. We will talk to you guys next week.